Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Can you see me? How are we doing? Check something real quick. Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday, September 29th. Streaming a little later than usual because I wasn't sure if I was going to stream today. I don't feel like I'm totally in focus. Let me look at this here. Oh, I bet it's that. That's a little better. Okay. I didn't know if I was going to stream today. I was sort of busy and I was debating whether I wanted to step away and do this or just keep doing what I was doing. And I felt like, why not both? So I'm going to be talking about what I was doing. First things first, 3 things from the library. Okay, so today, let's see, we've got this recently showed up. It was something I ordered from overseas. It is a new 4K edition of The Silence of the Lambs. If you watched Jim Lujan's and my top 5 favorite movies show from probably last year or the year before, I'm pretty sure if this wasn't number 1, it was number 2. I don't remember. It's been a little while. And the reason I can't be sure is it depends what day you catch me on. But I know it ranked high. Silence of the Lambs is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a movie that I can always go back to and find some new little thing I appreciate about it. So when I heard that they were coming out with a brand new transfer, 4K, UHD, with HDR and everything, and I'm kind of a movie file, like I just had to pick it up. I have not watched this yet, this edition of it, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay, that's first. Second, this is something that had been on my Amazon wish list. Hey, Dylan, how's it going? Forever. And then there was this stupid sale on Amazon, like cheaper than I thought I would ever get at any other place, but it is Star Trek, the original series, the complete set, just like $30 or something. It was just like, of course I want that. It has both the original versions of the shows and then the remastered versions. I honestly, the reason I have not watched any of these yet is I don't know which versions I want to watch. It's a dilemma. I mean, of course, a sort of touched up, nice remastered version is kind of a cool idea. But then part of the appeal for me of the original series is how cheesy it is, So and like, the sets that look like cardboard and the bad mats and the kind of cheesy looking models, like that's part of the appeal. So I don't know, and that's why I love the graphic design for this set. This is one of the cases. I mean, can we sit and appreciate Spock's visor there? I mean, come on. Like, honestly, it was worth $30 just for the look of this totally cool set with the cases. And then you get the shows as a bonus almost. So anyway, I'm excited about that. Again, once I decide like which versions am I watching, maybe I'll go through original versions, all of them. And then for select episodes, rewatch because they're short, you know, I mean, they're like probably 22 minutes or something. Select episodes, then go and watch the remastered versions. Let's see here. And then finally, this is going to tie a little bit into what we'll be talking about today. So I wouldn't dare describe myself as a manga and anime fan, because I'd be afraid that, you know, you'd run into that guy who'd be like, oh, really? What are your 5 favorite mangas or animes? And that would become a mess real quick. I'm a casual appreciator of manga and anime. I wouldn't claim to be a fan. And I know, because I know for a fact I'm not very knowledgeable at all on any of it. I know the big things, and I love the big things. Like, I know Akira, I know Ghost in the Shell, I know Ninja Scroll, I know Fist of the North Star. Like, you know, I mean, I know the big things, but I think, you know, someone like that's like saying, like, you know, I'm way into hip hop, and they're like, oh yeah, what's your favorite band? And you say like Beastie Boys. Like, it's not super convincing. Okay, so that's, get that out of the way. Nevertheless, I follow a bunch of different anime and manga, like fan groups on Facebook, because I love the art. You know, I just love to like how some of the stuff looks. And someone was sharing panels from this manga called The Climber that not only did I think it was totally new to me, and not only did I think the art was really cool, but it was art that I thought would be great inspiration for drawing my next book. Because it's, the main character is this guy who wants to be like one of the best mountain climbers in the world. So it's a lot of outdoor stuff. It seemed to really be focused on getting climbing equipment exactly right, the clothing, the gear, all that kind of stuff. The scenery, like the drawings of mountains were really cool, and trees and snow, and I just really, I thought not only did it look very cool, but it's like, oh, this is kind of stuff that I might want to look at, not to emulate because DvsM isn't a manga, but to give me ideas of like, oh, maybe I could draw something like that, or oh, that's neat, I like how they did that. How are they doing that? How are they getting that effect? Maybe I can do my own version of that. So I started looking like, where do I pick up issues of The Climber? Well, it's not been translated to English in print. I like print. I want print. I think there might be some of it translated to English digitally, but I wanted print. So then I thought, well, I'm not really going to be reading it anyway. I'm buying it for the art resource. So I'll just get the original Japanese. And then I started looking like, okay, well, does Amazon have the Japanese version? It did, like individual books like this. But I didn't know, like the panels I was seeing that were inspiring to me, that were interesting to me, I didn't know which books they were from. Is that from 1 or 7 or 6? Like, I don't know where those are from. Maybe I should just get all of them, you know? And so then I'm going on eBay and looking for like the Climber complete set and skimming for like what's a reasonable price with reasonable shipping in reasonable condition. I found one that was pretty good for a pretty good price. Here's the funny part, 17 volumes. I now have, I'm not going to pick up all of them, but I have 17 parts, the complete series of The Climber, which I can't read because I don't read Japanese. Nevertheless, I'm very excited about it. I'm going to just show you a couple. I don't know how well it'll show up on the camera, and it's not going to do it justice even if it does show up, but just to give you examples. Let's see. You can see this. This is a good example of something that struck me. I mean, just like the clothing details and the, you know, the hair, that glove in hand is really cool. Like, just really nicely done. you know? So that was part, and then here, I'll show you another thing that got my attention. But this was cool. These guys coming out of their tents after a snowfall. And again, like, of course, this is very much to me like a manga thing. Is look at I love this mix of really meticulous realism. Like if you don't look at their heads, if you don't look at their faces, like this looks like just a very meticulous ink drawing of people up in the snow. But then you could like look at them above the shoulders and it's like totally stylized, you know, classically manga kind of, you know, and it's that somehow it marries. Somehow you can kind of like it's not jarring. It doesn't look like a real person with an anime head, you know, taped over it. It somehow works. But I loved anyway going through these, how he's drawing nature, how he's drawing trees, how he's drawing mountains, how he's drawing all the gear and like the harnesses and the zippers and all that. And it was like, this is a good like inspirational thing to be looking at probably in these last few days before I start drawing, just to kind of get my head pointed in the right direction. There are other things I'm looking at for inspiration too, visual inspiration too for this book. This is probably the last thing I'll be looking at. There are a couple others too that I'm just going to keep immersing myself in them and hope that some of it gets in interesting ways. Okay. Those are the three things. Now, let's see here. Today's topic. Just checking it. Okay. So, the title of this video, what did I pick? Working hard now instead of harder later. So, to give you a sense of what I'm talking about. Oh, I wanted to also share an image to help illustrate what I'm talking about. Let's see here. This you would have seen in the thumbnail. Let me try and share this. Okay. This is a fraction, just a fraction of a folder in my DvsM 2001 file titled Forest References. Last weekend, I drove up northeast to get pictures of the wilderness in the general vicinity of where DvsM 2001 takes place. Because I wanted like those kinds of trees and that kind of forest, these kinds of rock formations in that part of the state. What is the ground looking like? What's this brush look like? What do the cliff faces look like? What kinds of trees? Like, I wanted to get a real good sense of like, this is the environment and photograph the hell out of everything. So when I'm drawing it, not only is it accurate to where I'm claiming this is taking place, but I have lots of examples to look at. So when I need to come up with something for this particular scene or this particular panel or page or whatever, I have an abundance of resources. I need a fallen tree here. Let's look at some fallen tree ideas. And I start looking at my pictures and I start cobbling together something in my head. It's like, I'm going to going to use a little bit of this, but I'm going to do this kind of angle, and I think I'm going to make it broken in this way, or it's going to be leaning on this kind of rock. Where's a picture of a rock? Whatever, you know, and me try and like, so I can have all my references out so I can draw whatever I need to draw that looks something like reality. The problem I'm finding and that I'm addressing today is I've now taken, I'm going to close this now. Let's see here. I've taken literally hundreds of forest pictures and then found dozens and dozens more just in Google image searching, you know, trying to find like specific things to see. And it's created, in a way, a problem. The resource library is not very helpful. It wouldn't be. So let's like, okay, so let's imagine I'm drawing a page. I'm drawing page 9 or something. And I need to see, I want to see, you know, maybe what the mountains, like the skyline would look like there, the horizon. And then I need some, you know, some examples, maybe some, like, let's say I want a dead tree and then a couple live trees, some big, some small. I have a folder, let's say of 400 forest reference. It becomes totally useless when you have that many, because what am I going to do? Every time I'm drawing a new panel, am I going to go open up forest reference and start, like, you know, down arrowing through 400 photos to find the 5 or 6 that I think are useful to me? Every time, like, that's a nightmare, and there's going to be a ton of time spent every time I have to go into this folder to find some reference of a forest, which with this story that I've written will be often. Like, this is a folder I'm going to have to go into regularly. And it made me think of something, a story I think I was telling to the Making Comic. I think it was the Making Comics guys recently, in the past few months. There's this game that I love, Braid. I don't know if you're familiar with Braid, if you have video games. It was an indie darling 15 years ago or something like, I mean, it's, you know, it'd been around for a while, but anyway, some anniversary edition just came out in the past few months. And it actually had commentary, just like a movie, where you could be playing the game and you could turn on either the artist commentary, was David Hellman, or the programmer, game director commentary, which is Jonathan Blow. And me being more of a creative type and not a programmer, I was always like mostly interested in David Hellman's commentary about how he's building these levels and drawing them and what his thought was and what he was going for and all of that. And he was telling the story about how, so he's working within a framework, within like a programming environment that Jonathan Blow had built. So he's, you know, just serving this system. And when he's building levels, people who are into video games that are familiar with this term, or maybe if you're into astronomy or something, there's something called parallax scrolling. The basic idea is, I'm going to try and illustrate this, like, you're building these layers of art into the background, and as your character moves, do you see this kind of, how this orange comic doesn't move as fast as the black comic? And it gives you this impression that you're moving and that there are some things that are distant, they're not moving very fast. And then there are some things that are a little bit closer, they're moving more, and then there's the foreground, which is probably moving fastest of all, okay? So when he's building levels, first, of course, he had to draw each of these elements. He had to tell the program how deep they are into the background. But because the way the program was built, that wasn't enough. He also had to tell the program how fast should these different layers scroll when the player is moving? Okay. It wasn't linked to how deep it was. So he had to maintain like an Excel spreadsheet. He found out very early on, like if I'm doing this, if this is the level and we're doing this kind of thing, I have to, first of all, I got to come up with how deep in the background is this, some numerical value. And then what is its scroll rate? Like what's the speed it's going? And now I got to remember this in the spreadsheet. So when I do the next level and I need a similar thing, I'm not coming up with all new numbers or having to do this all over again or contradicting values I chose in the previous level. Like I want it to be consistent, therefore I got to record this all. Therefore it was a nightmare for him, having to constantly calculate, okay, depending on how deep this is, how fast do I think that should be going? And now I got to make a note of that. And when I do a new level, I need to consult this table I've made to continue being consistent with these kind of arbitrary choices I've made. Follow me? Okay, so now back to DvsM 2000. Oh wait, no, okay, so this is the important part before we get back to 2000. David explains this in his commentary. Then it switches over to Jonathan Blow, the programmer. And the programmer says, I had no idea this was such a headache for David. Had I known that this was a problem, I would have said, let's stop everything and modify the program so scroll rate and background depth are linked. So you don't have to maintain this, like, I picked this number, so what should this number be calculation every time. Like it'll just assign a scroll rate depending on how far back it is, okay? Because even though I understand why David didn't bring it up, because it would have derailed everything. It would have been this, like, we have to stop everything and figure this out before we go forward. And no one wants to do that. Everyone, of course, is like, ugh, that sounds terrible. The problem is, whatever time we would have lost starting over is nothing compared to the time he was losing every single level through the entire game. It behooves you when you encounter these sorts of problems to just fix them, even if you have to pause, even if you have to delay, even if it's going to be an inconvenience or screw up your schedule. Fix them so you're not spending even more time later on working around these problems. That is the thought I had when I was going through my forest reference folder. The thought is digging into that folder and searching for the references I need every time I'm drawing a forest scene is going to be an amazing amount of wasted time. Not necessarily wasted, but it's going to be an amazing amount of time spent in setting up each page every week. It would be wiser to spend maybe a few hours today going into this folder of hundreds of forest photos and naming each file in a way that allows me to search them. Like basically create an index. And what that's going to look like is me going in and looking at a photo and seeing, what did I take a photo of? Oh, this is a detailed photo of ponderosa pine tree bark. But it also, for example, is the foot of a tree where I can see the roots. All right. So in the name of I'm going to change the name of the file, whatever it is now, I'm going to change it to bark and roots. Bark roots. Okay. Save. Next one. Oh, this is a distant one. This is like silhouetted trees against the sky. Okay. Something, and I got to come up with a name for each one. And then when I find another, like, detail bark or whatever, I got to do again, bark. Whatever terms I know are going to come to my mind when I'm setting up a page, when I know, like, okay, for this one, I need a dead tree. Like, that's a very easy one, dead tree. So I need dead tree in the file name of every picture that has a dead tree in it, okay? So when I search the day of dead tree in my file search, I'll see all my images that have pictures of a tree with no leaves. Okay. But it can't just be dead tree, because dead tree might also have live trees next to it. So the names, I need to come up with basically keywords. And I'll figure this out as I'm naming them. I think I'll kind of start to realize, like, okay, I need a keyword for this. I need a keyword for that. Naming these all so they're searchable the day. And that's the point of, it's going to be a drag today. It's going to be just boring. I'm going to be just sitting here sipping coffee and renaming 300 or 400 photos. The point being that however much time I take today doing, I don't know, 4 hours, I don't know. This is like a 57 or 50 page comic. Not every page is in the forest, but I would say 2/3 of it is. So let's say 40 pages of forest scenes. If every week I'm doing a page that has forest in it, I'm digging into this folder for 15 or 20 minutes. Like, do the math. Very quickly, it way exceeds any time I spend today. I could spend all day today doing it, and it still is time saved. It's tedious, it's painful, it's boring. It makes you think, like, let's just start and figure it out. But that's, to me, a mistake. And I was talking about it with Mary, and she was joking, like, I always talk about how there's writer Gary and artist Gary, and they're pretty segregated. Like, writer Gary tries not to think about artist Gary when he's writing, because if writer Gary thought about artist Gary, writer Gary might rein in what he's writing, because he might be worried, like, how is artist Gary going to draw that? Like, and that's not writer Gary's problem. Writer Gary is to tell the best story he can, to write the best script he can. Artist Gary has to figure it out. And those two people are kind of separate. And then artist Gary starts making decisions that writer Gary never thought about. Like, what is this guy wearing? Like, this is a warmer part of the story. He's not going to be wearing a coat yet. What's under his coat? Now this is later. This is nighttime. They're up in the mountains. Now he's wearing a coat. What kind of coat does he have? None of that's in the script. That's artist Gary's problem. Artist Gary has to make those sorts of calls. But Mary is pointing out there's really like a third Gary who's active right now. And that's kind of project manager Gary, or project director Gary, or systems management Gary. This is the one who's sitting and trying to think ahead, trying to anticipate what is going to derail artist Gary, what is going to make artist Gary not efficient, what is going to make artist Gary waste time or frustrate him, what's going to prevent artist Gary from, when he starts a new page Saturday morning, just drawing, just like getting into it. Like what, because there's always some kind of time spent not drawing. There's setting up the page, there's laying out panels, there's putting in the new page number, there's all these sort of, that stuff can't be avoided. But what can be avoided is what I'm talking about, spending 45 minutes going through your reference images because you were so thorough gathering every single thing you thought you could conceivably want, to the point of now you're overwhelmed and it takes you a while to settle on, like, what's the best. Something I spent time today doing, I know there's a scene where one of the characters, it's nighttime and he looks up at the moon. And me being me, it's like, I know the date the story takes place. What was the phase of the moon on that date? And like, I'll do that research today and find some screen caps, like some reference, to keep artist Gary from having to do that when he just wants to get to drawing. Artist Gary is going to be pissed off and frustrated if he's getting down, he's sitting down, he's ready to draw today, and he's like, oh yeah, the moon. The moon. What is the moon going to look like? I don't even know. What did it look like that? And then he has to go and historical moon phases, October, whatever, 2001, like, and trying to figure out, like, in this part of Arizona, how high would it be, or like whatever. I'll do that now. Because what I would prefer is artist Gary, months from now, when he's drawing that scene, he remembers like an admin Gary anticipated this and saved me as a picture of what a waning gibbous moon looks like or something, you know. Okay. That's what I'm doing today. That's just one example. Another one was, I alluded to before, what is everybody wearing? And coming up with versions of it, because again, you'll have like, you're going to follow these characters as they basically get deeper, like higher altitude, but then also you'll see them at night, and it's not like freezing, but it's cold. But at first, when you first see them, they probably won't even be wearing their jackets, because why would they be wearing their jackets? Like they're in a lower, it's not that cold yet. So figuring out layers, what kind of jacket? What are they wearing under the jacket? Are they wearing anything under whatever's under the jacket? And having examples of that to draw when I know, like, oh, in this scene, he has his jacket off. He's wearing this kind of shirt or this kind of sweater or something. The reference model wasn't wearing that. So where are my examples of that kind of sweater or shirt so I can, you know, draw it? Okay. Wow, lots of messages. I'm sorry I've been neglecting the chat. Let's see here. Remember I used to do the creepy Annal did around my mom, and she told me stuff she didn't like it. Yeah, it's a great scene, of course. I've only read maybe a handful of manga. Yu-Gi-Oh, Zexal, Kaiju. I can tell you that I recognize of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you've listed, I recognize 1.5. Of course, I recognize Yu-Gi-Oh. Chainsaw Man sounds familiar. Like maybe I know that, I don't know. But this is what I'm talking about. I'm not knowledgeable. Yeah, I mean, most of the time, it's funny, assuming you're talking about the forest stuff. When I don't know what the final pages are going to look like yet, because I haven't started drawing. And there is, with DvsM, I think just with, I don't know how other artists are. I know for me, and this has been the case with every DvsM before, I don't know 100% what anything's going to look like until the first time I draw it. I have an idea, like I have at least a starting kind of concept. It's like, I think I'm shooting for this. But then you just end up playing with it and monkeying with it until you find like, okay, I think that looks good. I'm going to do it like this every time now. And that's been the case with not just like for example, I know it was the case with Opie in the previous book, DvsM 1979. Opie, the Oviraptor, the dinosaur. I know what those dinosaurs look like. I really hadn't decided, is he kind of bushy, or are his feathers pretty close to his body? What's his color pattern? Does he have spots? Does he have stripes? Is he dark here? Is he light there? Like what? I had no idea. I knew basic anatomy. This is how big this thing is, and this is what its head is like. I had a life model of like a bust of an Oviraptor, but I wasn't drawing it to look like this. I'm pointing at this model that you can't see. I wasn't drawing it to look like that. I was just using that for like, what's the head shape? And then after that, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. But the first day I had to draw Opie, where he's coming out of his cage. That was basically when I settled on Opie's design. That was also the case with a lot of the characters in DvsM. where I had an idea of what I wanted them to look like, but then you get to drawing them and you're working in these limitations of stark black, white. So you're playing with like, well, that doesn't quite work for contrast, or that looks a little strange, or maybe I'm going to reverse this. Maybe right now this is black and this is white. Maybe I'll make that white and this black, and this is too, I need to add some like detail or something to this, some distress. This character, I had their hair as dark, but I think light looks better. Like, and I don't know what they're going to look like until that first time I draw them. That's 100% the case with this. And there's a bunch of people in this. There's like 6 main characters. We'll see what they look like. Some of them I have very specific ideas, and I don't think they'll be very far off. Others, I don't know. We'll just see what looks cool. So to get back to this, I don't know where I'm going to land with the backgrounds, where I'm going to land with the environment. Forest, the ground, the mountains in the background. Like, I don't know yet, because I haven't had to draw it yet. I know the page, there's a 2-page, my baptism by fire will be, there is a 2-page spread of all 6 characters working their way into the woods. That will probably set the tone of what do my backgrounds look like in this book, because then I'll be trying to kind of, that will be my touchstone. Here's the thing. When I first conceived of this book, I imagined the backgrounds not being a big deal. I imagined, I might have even talked about this in a video or on somebody's channel, or I don't even remember. I thought what I would do is take pictures of, 100 trees against the sky, live trace them in Adobe to get basically a silhouette stencil, have this library of high detail vector silhouettes of pine trees. And every time I was doing a panel, just pull some trees out of the library and throw them in the back. So that level of kind of like, whatever, man, trees, whatever, there's forest behind them, who cares? Like, that was kind of my thought. As I get closer and closer to drawing, as I just spent a day up there, like taking in the forest, as I've been thinking more and more about the progression of the story, I have to admit it's coming, this concept of the environment being a character is seeping in. And I'm having more ideas about how to use the environment to not only create mood or atmosphere or whatever, but to, in a way, symbolize themes that are going on in the story without getting into too much detail. If I do that, then the background is more of a player visually. The background is more important visually. And now that I'm looking at stuff like this, for people who really sit and like think about backgrounds and worry about backgrounds and make the background the star in some cases, I feel like I feel artist Gary kind of starting to drift in that direction of like, I don't think I'm going to go the minimal route that I imagined. I think I'm not going to make this like, a showcase of my nature drawing. That's not it. But I think there's like it's going to be more in that direction than when I originally thought, which is like, whatever. I'll allude to trees in the background. It doesn't matter. I think, especially as they get deeper in the woods and they're more in the wild, to convey that, I think the background will actually be more mid ground. You know, it'll be, I want you to feel like you're in the wild. I want you to feel that they're in the wild. I don't want it to be like cookie cutter trees in the background, which is sort of what I was originally imagining. So we'll see. Again, I don't know what this book's going to look like until I'm drawing it. And all I know, and the reason I don't stress about that so much is it'll end up looking however I think looks cool, you know? So whatever it's going to look like, I'll be happy with it, you know? As always, it will be finding this middle path between what would be really awesome and what's achievable in the page a week rate. So that's going to be the main, that is part of what determines what DvsM looks like, is what can I do in the time allotted? Which is it's a tough thing to admit sometimes. It's a tough thing to come to terms with. I think I talked about this on Making Comics a year ago or so. I was talking about, there was a point when I was drawing the last one, the 79 scientist story, where I had this vision at one point. I was finishing up on a page, getting ready to start the next one. But I had this vision in my head just for like a few moments of what that page could look like if I decided to take a month on it. And I could see like how beautiful and cool that page could be. But I just don't have the time. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. I don't know why, at least it was then. I don't know why it hit me so hard. But there was like a funk. And this is how I talked about it on Making Comics, I think. I was in a funk for at least a few days, knowing that the work I do in DvsM, while it's the best I can do with the time I allow myself, it's not the best I can do. And that's, I think people get that. They understand. They don't expect you to take 40 years or something to make a fucking comic book. But I think, for me, for someone who takes pride in my work and wants it to be great, like sometimes that's frustrating. Sometimes it's frustrating where it's like, I wish I had not even like a month, but like I wish I had 4 more days to mess with this page. Because I know I could get it to turn another corner and really, like, it looks fine now. It looks good, but it could look even better. But I just can't do that. If I do that with this page, then I'll want to do it for all the pages. And before you know it, it takes me 2 years to get, drawing to get a book out rather than 1. Like it doesn't make sense. So anyway, let's see here. Do you have any movies? I have not only many movies from the Criterion Collection. I'm sort of a Criterion Collection addict. I also have the Godzilla collection, which is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. They have a few their box sets are so expensive though. I have a few Criterion box sets. I have the Bruce Lee one. I have the Godzilla one. I have I don't remember what they call it. It's like a 60s, 70s American film one. It's got like 5 Easy Pieces and Last Picture Show and, like these kind of just big 60s, 70s American cinema movies. I might have a couple others. There are a few that I really want, but they're super expensive. And to be honest, I can't just, for example, this is a perfect example. They have a Fellini box set. And it, their graphic design is always totally on point. You just kind of want the box. Like it just is so cool. And here's the reason I haven't gotten it. It shows that I do have a modicum of responsibility when it comes to my Criterion addiction. I have never seen a Fellini film. It's just got this, Fellini's movies just have this reputation of, if you're a cinephile and you're into weird arty European cinema, like, you got to get into Fellini, and I just haven't gotten to him yet. It would be pretty crazy and perhaps even financially irresponsible to buy a Fellini boxed set because Criterion put it out and it looks cool, having no real familiarity with Fellini and no idea if I would even take to it or want it or whatever, you know. So like, I've resisted on some. Oh, I have the Zatoichi set, the Blind Swordsman set. So good. So those movies are awesome. But anyway, let's see here. I'm glad we have records of calendars. Yeah, it's well, and there's a couple cool websites. The one I was just looking at this morning to get the moon phase dialed in. I don't remember the name of it, but you enter, it's a globe, you position where you were, like, to get you, because I didn't want solely the phase, I wanted the lunar angle. You know, so like, just to show you what I'm talking about. So if this is the moon on a particular day, that's fine. That's easy to find. Like, what is the phase? Oh, it's okay. But was it like this? Was it like this? Like, from, you know what I mean? That's what I wanted to dial in. So for like this part of Arizona on this date at this time, what was because I also had written, I think in the original script, I had written that it was a new moon, so it was totally dark out. And then I realized, like, this is a known date. Like, it's knowable what the moon phase was. And so then I went and looked it up, and it was not. It was actually mostly full. It was like 78% full. I had been full just like a few days before. So I was like, okay, well, I got to change the script a little bit because it's describing, this being like this complete inky black darkness except for the stars, and that's not exactly what it would look like. But then on top of that, it's okay, so I have this mostly full moon again. Like, what if, mostly full, what's the angle of the shadow? This is another example of most people don't care about this, and I get that most people might be listening to this. Actually, most people read as Jim Lujan saying, like, why are you driving yourself crazy looking up this crazy stuff? First of all, I like those details. I appreciate those details. When I see things that I know are wrong in movies, it checks me out. I realize not everybody is like that, but I am like that. And furthermore, I've said this a few times already, DvsM has it's established its reputation, it's created an expectation of accuracy and specificity and detail. It's a little fucking late, 3 books in, drawing the 4th, to say, like, whatever, man. Like, I feel like in a way it's disrespectful, not just to the readers or the audience who might love DvsM for the specific way I approach it, but to my vision. I mean, talk about writer Gary, artist Gary. There's also conceiver Gary, years and years and years ago, who thought this is what DvsM is going to be. And I try to be loyal to that guy too. It's so. And it really, I mean, that took me 10 or 15 minutes to find, like, the correct appearance of the moon on that date in that part of the world. And it's just fun to have that little detail right. It didn't take that much time. So, yeah, I do enjoy doing the period stuff. It's a lot of work, but And this one was less so, you know, because it's 2001, which I know to younger people might seem like a million years ago, but I remember 2001. It wasn't that different, you know. So like you're more checking like real specific details, like for example, there's a gas station, there's a cash register. What did a cash register then look like? That's something that would change. But in terms of like what did a building look like, or what kind of clothes were people wearing, it's not as intense and intimidating as, for example, 79 with Dr. Wagner, where it's like, what would all these guys and Dr. Wagner be wearing in like a kind of an office environment, professional environment in 1979? That's a lot of work. If I'm talking about guys camping in 2001, jeans and flannels, like it's safe, like you're fine. Pick out a jacket that doesn't, like, you know, stay away from brands, you'll be okay. You know, don't pick anything that, if it looks too specific, there's like a weird collar or a weird pattern, so then you might want to just check to see like what is this thing. But you're probably fine. You know, it's not, you're not getting that far afield. There's the little details, like everyone's gonna have a watch because no one has a smartphone. And you know, like there's this basic kinds of, you can think of the things. Like it's not real difficult though. The next comic I'm doing will be the one after this one, because that's going. This is all I'm going to say about it at this point, but it has it's an 80s setting, so that will require again clothing and hair research and stuff like that. Yeah, lingo's fun. Yes, but also a thematic character, you know. Let's see here. Ooh. That sounds fun. Yeah, that sounds great. Let's see here. I saw a video last year about Bad Science, Good Movies. The hostess reminded me that I don't need to be scientifically accurate. I see all the science infographics of, yeah. I think it just needs to, for me at least, and this is a purely subjective thing, and it depends on what kind of story you're telling. I think it needs to be just accurate enough to survive, and I'm making this up on the fly, but 2 layers of questions. Like, I think, like, do you know what I mean? Like, how does that work? Oh, there's an arc reactor. It's kind of like this non-radioactive reactor that Tony Stark made. It's clean energy, you know. Okay, well, like, does it give off heat, or like why isn't he just selling these to everybody now? It's like, well, it's really hard to make and you need very special rare elements. Okay, like 2 layers of questions. Sure, okay, you know, like of course it's going to fall apart if you go farther than that, but just enough where you can kind of like get a couple basic answers in. I think to me that's like not a bad place to be. I did that with how did the government make dinosaurs? And I came up with like, they did this. Well, what did they do after that? Well, it was this and this and this. And then after, if you ask me follow-up questions beyond that, it's a comic book, man. I don't know. But just enough. How do the Martian ray guns work? How does the befuddler gas work, the hallucination gas that you use? You know, I come up with like some good fundamental answers to questions, and then maybe 1 layer under that, 2 questions, and then that's it. Yeah, it's funny. So a big part of DvsM is drawing the dinosaurs as accurately as I can, per what we know currently when I'm drawing them, and based on me looking at skeletons and things and trying to decide, like, I think maybe like this. coming up with plausible realizations of this is what maybe a dinosaur looked like. But I think it's funny to see the distinction between that and how we used to imagine them in movies and paleo art and even the Jurassic Park movies. Like, none of the dinosaurs in there look great. They look great in the sense that they're well realized special effects and they're nicely designed by an artist. But none of them are great paleo. None of them look like what those animals actually look like in life. Okay. So in northern and eastern Arizona, there's a gas station that has fake, like, old sculptures of dinosaurs out front. And they're like the very kind of old-timey 50s cheesy, corny looking dinosaurs. And I really wanted to find a way to work that in. I really wanted like a postcard in the gas station that showed them, or like just say like this gas station has them too, and put some out front or something like that. And I felt like it was too on the nose. I just couldn't justify, I'm going to have a comic with actual dinosaurs in it. And it's just, to me, it just was a little too winky. And I'm fine with winks. If you look through the DvsM books, there's winks in there. But it was just a little too winky, where it's like, let me show you this corny Flintstones dinosaur, and now I'll show you a real one. Like, I didn't feel like DvsM is that. It's not that kind of book to really kind of snicker at, like an eye roll at, like, look at the irony. I pulled back, but I thought about it a lot. Yeah, no, I love that stuff. That's part of why I love that classic Star Trek. It's in that family. Yeah, I forgot where it is. I don't remember if it's like Sholo or Snowflake or I don't know. I know it's northeast of the valley, and I don't remember I looked at it and I had that somewhere, but it's already gone. Okay. Let's see what else. I think that's it. Maybe a relatively short stream. I've got to go through another to-do list. This is just like indexing my reference photos. I've got to go through my 17 volumes of The Climber. This is a third of them. There's more over here. And with this, go and mark useful examples. Probably color-coded for, like, in this case, it'll probably be environment versus gear. Like, that will be how I'm sorting things. I'll also be using these for the other stuff I'm going to be looking at for inspiration. I've got that pile of Nestor Redondo comics. I love his work. I feel like almost the way he draws anything would be something I want to look at to kind of keep inspiring me and giving me ideas. So I'll be going through those and marking pages. And I think there were a couple others. Oh, I wanted to go through At the Mountains of Madness. I had Gao or Go Tanabe mark some things in that. Just so I have, again, this is all the prep. I intend to be starting drawing page 1 of DvsM 2001, The Soldier. I'm going to start, by the way, I got to get in the habit of referring to all the books by the main character, because it has come to my attention, and this is perfectly understandable, except for the super fans, nobody has the year straight. So when I say like DvsM 75 or 79 or 97, it might take them a while, if ever, to recall which one that is. So I'm going to start referring to them by the focal character. So, for example, DvsM 75 is the man in black. 97, the photographer or the bystander, the eyewitness, the Jenny one. 79 will be the scientist, Dr. Wagner. And this one will be the soldier. Name to be determined, not determined, I know his name, to be announced. I intend to start drawing DvsM 2001, the soldier, at earliest this coming Saturday. At latest next Saturday, a week from Saturday. So soon, which is why like I'm trying to get all these last things checked off. I've got to take pictures. These are smaller parts, but I got to take pictures of 2 more people. I'm going to talk to one person about it tomorrow. It's a very bit part. It's like 6 pictures or something. It's very low. Like I'm hoping they'll just be like, sure, and it'll be that. And maybe I'll even be able to do it right then, like just on the spot when I see them. And then another person, which that'll be not a big deal either. I've got to do my forest reference inventory. I've got to go through my print media and mark inspiration. And as every DvsM begins with a classified document that fades into the first panel, I need to write that classified document for this. And after that, I think off the top of my head, I think, now that's still a lot of things. It's like, that's all I've got, but it's not much left. It's really not much left. I think I've pretty much thought of everything else and addressed everything else. So I should be drawing soon. And I want to be drawing soon. That's why I think at latest a week from Saturday. Let's see here. It's it's probably the least scientific part of my creative process. I just try out things until it sounds right. I can't explain it, but some names just sound right for once you know the character, I find it's not that difficult to settle on a name. If you don't know the character, that's where I think you'll struggle. But for whatever reason, if I can picture this person in my head, I can come up with, like, I know the name that sounds right for that person. And sometimes it's kind of Easter eggs or homages. Like, so for the last one, Dr. Veronica Wagner, aka Ronnie Wagner, her first name, I liked Veronica because it sounded it told me something about her parents. That's a little bit of a old-fashioned name. Kind of probably a family kind of, like it's somebody's grandma or aunt or somebody. What I really liked about it is I could nickname her Ronnie. It would allow, and that served 2 purposes. Story purpose and like an Easter egg homage purpose. The story purpose is I could sort out between when she's having conversations with people, you can tell who she's close with and who's a colleague. Colleagues are calling her Dr. Wagner or Veronica. Okay. People she's close with are calling her Ronnie. And I liked that I had a name that allowed me to do that subtext. Okay. The other reason I liked Ronnie is it was an homage to one of my favorite sci-fi horror movies, The Fly, where Gina Davis's character in the movie is Veronica, aka Ronnie. So I just okay, I like Ronnie for that. Wagner, I liked, to me, it's kind of got a tomboyish vibe to it. Like, other people might feel differently, but I liked that it had that. It wasn't a pretty name. It was more of like a name like a Jeep. Like it had like a ruggedness to it. Veronica Wagner. Ronnie Wagner. And also, it was a little bit of an homage to Lindsay Wagner, the Bionic Woman. So that's how we ended up with Veronica Wagner, Dr. Veronica Wagner. It also had, to me, Wagner has just a 70s sound. Like it, and that's some of what goes into picking names. That was definitely a factor in picking names for the characters in DvsM 1975, the Man in Black one. Because I have two generations of men. I have young Man in Black, Ruben Garcia, and old Man in Black, George. And his last name, I think it was Milton, if I remember right. I should know that off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's Milton. If it wasn't Milton, Milton was like a cut version. But that's an example of I guess they're both technically, no. Ruben's a boomer. George would be whatever George is like World War II generation. George probably was in the military in World War II. Probably in like OSS or something, but that's his generation. So this becomes the factor with these period stories. You're picking a name that makes sense for that. Like, for now, some of you are younger, but for me, like, what's a name that's a grandpa name? And like George Milton sounds like a very grandpa-y name to me. Like grandpa in the sense of like what generation? When was this guy probably born? Sometime in the teens, probably. So like, what kind of names would you expect for someone who was born in the teens? Meanwhile, Ruben, I think, was born, I forgot where I put him. I thought it was like late 40s or early 50s. Now, Garcia, I hesitated with Garcia because that's, again, a little, like, I knew I wanted him to be Hispanic. So Garcia is kind of like, it feels like, oh, Johnson, something like that. In my defense, I grew up in Phoenix. I grew up in Arizona. I knew a lot of Garcias. Like, Garcia is kind of like Johnson, and it's not that much of a cop. So I was like, I like Garcia. It sounds good, And then Ruben, you're just working from there. You're like, what's a plausible Hispanic guy's first name, that I like? And again, when you know the character, you start trying them out. Javier, Aline, Jorge, like you start like Manuel, like you just start going through names and you picturing this character in your head. It's like, when does it feel like it hits? And for some reason, to me, Ruben was like, yeah, that sounds right. So, character named Pinky, one of the Atomic Space Age stories. It says she's best friends with Hope. It's okay. Pinky's a lesbian assistant. So falls in love with super hard-hitting character. That sounds. That's a fun pitch. I hope to see it someday. So, all right. I think that's all I've got today. So, when I check in next, yeah, no matter what, I should be drawing the next book. Whether I start drawing this coming weekend or the next one, I'll be checking in 2 weeks from today. So either I will have started work on page 2, or I'm starting page 1. One or the other. Wow. It's crazy to be like starting again. I'm excited. I'm excited to start drawing. Kind of for what I alluded to before, like, I never know what these are going to look like until I start doing them. And so I'm kind of excited to see what it starts turning out like, what it starts looking like. But there's also a lot of anxiety because I haven't, other than day job, which is a different kind of drawing, I haven't been doing a lot of drawing in a while. So I think there'll be like a getting back up to speed, getting warmed, like, you know, throwing myself back into it. I should probably try to build some time in here and there to at least do some sketching, just to shake the dust off. Wouldn't be a bad idea. So I'll have to look at that. Let's see here. This is, it's very possible. I swear it's clean. This is like a go-to comfortable warm weather shirt for me. So it's, and you know, I've got too many t-shirts, far too many. But the ones you like, you wash and you put back. That's at the top of the drawer. So that one just gets, there's shirts that, you know, I probably got a dozen t-shirts I have not worn in 2 years. So I really should just donate them or something. Okay. I hope everyone is doing great with their projects. I hope the fans out there are excited about new DvsM coming. Oh, something, I'm not going to do it next time, but soon. Soon as in like maybe the next time. I'm probably going to do like an Ask Me Anything. Like, it just feels like a good, like, starting the new comic, ask me anything about DvsM, ask me anything about this book. I won't necessarily answer it, because spoilers, but you might as well ask. Ask me anything about me, ask me anything about my work or life or, you know, whatever. The news, I don't care. Like, but I'll probably, I didn't want to do it next time, because next time I know whether it's page one or page 2, I'll be kind of in like, oh my God, I'm starting to draw mode. But maybe the next one I will have calibrated myself and I can small talk. I appreciate you coming by, Dylan, and you have a good day too. So might as well start thinking now about crazy questions you could ask me sometime in the next few weeks. Once I what I'll probably do is next time I'll have a link to a Survey Monkey or something where you can submit anonymous questions. So why don't we just, you can start thinking about it now. Okay. I am out of here. I've got a lot of forest pictures to look at. I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Wish me luck.